All right, we're going to get started with our next panel. I know we have some folks at the door. If you want to make your way in to find a seat, this is a perfect opportunity before we get kicked off with our next panel. Bueller. Okay. We are going to get started and keep the conversation going. A really quick announcement too. After our next panel, which is a payments panel, we have the Payment Summit that's going to be taking place in the workshop room. Literally, if you walk out, you go down the hall to the left, you go straight in there. We'll have brand ambassadors that will be checking you in. So just want to call that out, that will be taking place after our next panel. I'm going to welcome Bren with Tweed. How about a warm round of applause, as well as our other panelists. She's going to be introing them, or they may intro themselves. Thank you, Bren.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'll give our panelists a second to take a seat here. All right. Hello. How is everyone doing today? Yeah, enjoying this dreary weather? Okay, no, that's great.
Nothing new, right?
Yeah, I'm not from here, so if you couldn't tell by my voice, I'm used to sunshine. I'm kidding. All right, everyone. So thanks so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the last panel. And today we're going to be talking about payments. Super broad topic, but I think super important for all of us as we build products and onboard the next wave of users into our space. So I won't take too much time talking about myself, but I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves, starting with Stein.
Great to meet you, everyone. So I'm Stein. I'm the other co-founder. I think some of you just saw Jim on the previous panel. So we deliver an awesome Web3 payments platform. You don't need to be technical. You can connect your wallet, spin up what we call a pay link, and get paid in USDC for perhaps e-commerce, selling digital goods, selling tokens, selling NFTs. We also have some deeper solutions for developers, so very easy to integrate what we call a checkout widget and have crypto payments on your website as an alternative to traditional card payments. All of our payment flows are decentralized, so we never take custody of funds. Merchants receive crypto instantly in their wallet. And our mission is ultimately to make this accessible to everyone. And we want to see hundreds of millions of people with crypto wallets using Helio for payments.
Hi, my name is Mike, not Kyle, Mike. We're building Sling, which is I call it like a global Venmo, instant payments, extraordinarily low cost. We've integrated with real-time payment systems in 70 countries now, and just keep building. Very, very simple. Add money, send to somebody else, off-ramp for half the cost of like any traditional payments product. Before this, I was at a bank called Monzo, building like a neobank in the UK. Worked in a food delivery company before that, and social media before that.
Hey everybody, my name is Tom Deletto. I'm the head of product at a company called Arculus. Arculus is a hardware wallet on a metal credit card form factor, designed to be incredibly secure, but also incredibly convenient and transactional, so that your hardware wallet isn't a thing that you can only use on your computer in your basement like once a month. It's actually something you can use on a day-to-day basis for real transactions and real Web3 use cases.
Awesome. And I realized I didn't introduce myself, but I am Bren. I lead business development at Tweed. We are creating embedded Web3 payments and wallet infrastructure, and we're continuing to expand. We just finished A16 CSX program, so we've got a lot of exciting things coming up. Happy to chat with anyone about that experience as well if you're interested. So without further ado, let's get into some questions. So first I wanted to start with something that I think touches all of us, but is something we've all seen in the crowd as well, even if you're not in the payments realm day to day. And that's with PayPal and other major brands entering our industry. So specifically with PYUSD, like the hope there is that it's gonna solve one of our major issues, which is the on and off ramp user experience, things we're all way too well aware of. And so I wanted to ask, what excites you most about a product like PYUSD, and how do you see these types of innovations impacting adoption?
Shall I go first? So I think one of the challenges as a builder in this space is sometimes there's not enough users who know how to use crypto wallets and benefit from all the tech that we're building. And we need big traditional players to come into the space to create awareness, have embedded wallets, and kind of onboard folks to crypto without even knowing perhaps that they're using Web3 rails. So for me, the PayPal entry with PYUSD is huge from that perspective. So we've been speaking a little bit to the PayPal team. Some of their plans include having a Solana wallet in the PayPal application. So we, for instance, focus a lot on merchant payments. So let's say if you are a merchant that already uses PayPal for payment processing, it's pretty awesome now to say, hey, I'm going to enable Helio, accept PYUSD, and instantly receive that into your PayPal app as PYUSD, and then also have the ability to off-ramp that to US dollars at zero cost with very little friction. I think that's exactly what we need to drive more people in this space.
Yeah, I agree it's a really big deal. I think a lot of people are starting to build really great user experiences on top of Solana with stablecoins and other technology, and I actually don't see that as a major impediment anymore. I think the thing that PayPal is doing and others is they're showing regulators and governments that this is like legitimate technology. And you know, if you go and you talk with regulators these days, I think a lot of them will say, this feels inevitable in the same way that maybe it feels inevitable for other people in this room, where it's like, this is a better technology, you know, payments will settle instantly, you don't have to worry about all this other infrastructure, you can, you know, there are actual advantages to this technology. A few years ago, everybody was saying, well, if this is so much better, why isn't everybody else doing it? Like, why isn't PayPal doing a stablecoin? Why isn't a bank starting to do stuff in this area? And now that they are, it's very easy to say, well, you know, this is like a real thing, you know, and I think like on the last panel, they were talking about my car and all of this kind of stuff. As that stuff happens as well, I think we get closer and closer to, you know, kind of an inevitable future, which is, I don't know if it's 5 years from now or 15 years from now, you know, pretty much all payments in the world are going to be done and settled on a blockchain. It's an opportunity for new startups to emerge that build great experiences on top of that, you know, and like, there's an innovator's dilemma that exists, and new people are going to come along and build great things and build huge companies on top of that. And then some of the established players as well are just going to modernize their stack and get around the innovator's dilemma. And it's probably the most exciting time to be in payments since, like, you know, Bank of America dropped their first debit card back in the day. You know, it's just kind of an amazing time, and we're starting to see it happen.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we miss so much of the value of stablecoins if you can't actually do things with them in the real world. If you can't go out and buy coffee with it, you end up having to go through this painful and expensive process of off-ramping to actually do something with these coins. And that's the part that's painful and slow and expensive and is hindering adoption, right? If I could actually buy my coffee and buy my lunch and buy whatever I want with a stablecoin, I have more reason to have stablecoins and more reasons to then be able to interact with the Web3 ecosystem and other cryptos. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do, right? We're trying to make it such that I can have my stablecoin and actually walk into a Starbucks and buy my coffee with it. I don't have to, you know, convert my stablecoin to fiat in order to actually buy my cup of coffee. Because today, if you have to rely on, you know, only finding the stores that accept stablecoins, you're going to starve before you're able to actually buy enough food. So being able to actually make it usable on a day-to-day basis is critical to the wider adoption.
Yeah, so I think that's a great segue into our next question, where we want to dive into on and off ramps, right? That's definitely for me as a user, my pain point when I have crypto sitting in my wallet, like you just mentioned, Tom. How do I actually use it in the real world? Like, what is it if you're completely illiquid, right? So I want to know more about how each of your solutions are working to create better, smoother off-ramp, on-ramp experiences, but also how are you making that more cost-effective, and what are some of the different tools or infrastructure you're employing for that?
I mean, I think the best off-ramp is no off-ramp, right? Just not even having to think about it. So one of the things that we do is we have the ability to combine a wallet and a payment card, a traditional payment card, onto the same physical device. So as a consumer, I know I can walk into any store anywhere in the world and pay with stablecoins that I hold in my own self-custody wallet, right? If the POS in that store only speaks Visa, then I'll spend my stablecoins over Visa rails. If it speaks direct, I can do a direct crypto transaction. I don't have to find that one store that accepts the one crypto that I hold. That's one of the things that, like Lightning, Bitcoin Lightning is kind of a cool technology, but try and find that one store where I can spend my Bitcoin Lightning, right? You're going to be wandering around the city forever trying to find that one store. But there are Visa terminals, MasterCard terminals, and Amex terminals at every store all over the world. So by just making it easy for consumers, making it such that they don't have to constantly think about how do I pay for this stuff, it's got to be as easy as it is to make a simple transaction today. We can't make it harder.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think there are kind of 2 points I want to make here. One is that we're in a period where you need transitional technologies, which means that you need to have all of your transactions that work on the blockchain, and we can transact very easily with a QR code or whatever. And then you need to make that completely seamlessly interactive with the traditional financial system as well, right? If everything is just stuck in your wallet, you can't use it to buy a coffee or whatever, it's useless to you. And so you need to, I think in order to be compatible with the traditional financial system, you have to think about it on a use case by use case basis. What am I doing? Am I investing? Am I trying to transact? Am I trying to, send money to somebody or pay somebody in another country or whatever? And our approach so far has been to be very use case specific for peer-to-peer and person-to-person payments, cross-border, and we've built these kind of very easy to use on and off ramps that work in a ton of places. Where it's like an Apple Pay transaction to add money, and to get money out of the system, it's like in the UK it's an FPS transaction, or in Europe it's a SEPA instant transaction, PIX in Brazil, whatever. I think you need to have all those things. You need to have the card, and then eventually, we will reach a point where you can kind of do all the things on chain, but that's going to be a decade or something out, right?
And do you see the fees coming down on that?
Yeah.
On average for Sling, what's the fee?
About half of what you would pay to a traditional, a traditional fiat remittance company. So far cheaper than you would pay if you were moving.
So with
fiat.
Wise, it's 50 basis points, and
I mean, it all varies very much by corridor. We compare kind of corridor to corridor, but less than them. Yeah.
So yeah, we're a little bit more focused on the decentralized flows, and we just partner with on and off rampers. One of the trends I've been seeing a lot is the cost is coming down dramatically. So for instance, we work with Ramp, with Stripe, with Transact, and you see 2-3% uplift, right, for on-ramping. We now have a solution for auto off-ramp. So what that means is a merchant can receive USDC, let's say, into a liquidation address, and it automatically is converted to a bank account of their choice, whether it's ACH, SEPA, SWIFT, and we're doing that at 10 basis points. So that's kind of an order of magnitude cheaper by 30x. So, and we do that with a partner called Bridge.xyz. So I think the second generation of on and off rampers are really changing the game in terms of the economics. And that's big, I think.
Some of the worst or the highest fees on ramps and off ramps are actually doing the conversion, right? The fiat and crypto back and forth. The longer people can stay in the blockchain world, right? You just eliminate the need to have to do the on and off ramping. That's the biggest cost savings that you're going to get. Is just don't go back to fiat.
Yeah, that again, another great segue. I think there's a utopia that we all dream of where everyone becomes crypto savvy. We're fully on chain in the next 5 years and everyone's doing it. But realistically, my grandma still thinks I work at Bitcoin, so does my mom and dad. That's just kind of the nature of it all, right? So I think what each of you have done in different ways is also incorporate those traditional either payment rails or systems, whether it be using Visa, or I know you guys have an interesting plugin with Shopify. But what do you see as the missing piece with all of these different technologies you have? It sounds like you have super efficient products that you're ready to just go to market. Like, what's the missing piece, and how are you using those traditional payment rails to achieve your goals of really reaching the masses?
You mentioned your grandma. So we talk about this thing called crypto granny internally. So make it so easy, you know, that your granny can buy you a hoodie for Christmas using crypto. Let's say I'm buying a Bored Ape hoodie, spending my USDC. Make it so easy that she doesn't even know that she's using blockchain. And what we've been trying to do is, for instance, next to the pay with crypto, is put a CTA that's familiar to a user. So kind of speak the language that users understand. And we just say pay with a card. The user selects that option, and we actually create a hidden crypto wallet for the user that's sort of linked to the email address. And then we serve an on-ramp, so they're just using a credit card, on-ramping into USDC, and then there's a final action for the merchant to receive crypto-native payments. It's not as slick as Apple Pay, so there's a long way to go. I think we're sort of 50% of the way there, but I think just presenting a UX that's familiar to the user, and at Sling, you guys are amazing at this, right? Make it feel like a Venmo or a Monzo, and then people, you know, are familiar with those actions and kind of abstract that blockchain is involved. So I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the thing with these things is that, you know, people, this is like a Bill Gates thing that I'm gonna quote just slightly wrong probably, but people underestimate the amount of change that happens over the long term and overestimate how quickly it happens. I worked at like a live online television channel. We actually broadcasted like 12 channels live in New York in like 1999, and everybody had 14.4 modems and 28.8 modems at home, and they were watching on real video with pixels about like 4 inches. I mean, you could literally, there are like 8 pixels moving around. But, you know, it was very clear to everyone there that the future was going to be live IPTV, and it was only a matter of time before like all the cable companies started going out of business. I tell you, it's like 2024 now and all the cable companies are going out of business. You know, it took about 25 years for us to get to the point where so many people cut the cord that you know, like MTV's business model is no longer viable. But back then we saw it and we were broadcasting all these channels of live TV. And I think the trick is here in this room, like we've seen what that future looks like. How do we navigate one step at a time from here to there? It's probably going to take a little bit longer than everybody in this room currently expects it to take, but the magnitude of the change is going to be much larger. And what I mean by that is we will actually just all live on chain. I mean, JP Morgan is the largest issuer of stablecoins in the world, I think. You know, they have like JPM coin or whatever that they use for their internal settlement. Everybody's doing it in one way or another. It's just not all interconnected. It hasn't all gone totally mainstream yet. But, you know, applications like yours, you know, like Sling, like building a card that works with a self-custody wallet, like these are all of the things that are going to bridge that gap and get us to that future faster, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it comes down to, you know, a couple things, you know, ubiquity, user experience, and value, right? You know, I'm only going to pay using on-chain things and stable coins if there's more value in it, and it can't be harder than what I have to do today, right? Why would I not use my standard, you know, Visa card, my Bank of America card, whatever, if that's easier, faster, if I get more rewards, why would I choose to use on-chain stuff and stable coins and things like that if there's no more additional value to it, especially if it's a worse user experience, right? If I know I can walk out of the grocery store and just grab my card, tap it on the terminal, I paid and I walk out, as opposed to having to have the terminal show me a QR code, I have to take my phone out and scan it and go through a whole process. That's harder. People aren't going to migrate to the harder thing, especially if the harder thing doesn't provide any additional value. So providing something that gives at least the same value and at least a good user experience is kind of like the baseline. But I think there's a lot of opportunities beyond that, right? I think we talk a lot about the kind of be your own bank scenario, right? That is the ultimate vision of of the sort of the self-custody, self-sovereign environment. You can be your own bank. You can work with all the Web3 decentralized services, and that's where this ultimately gets to, right? If I can essentially have a very simple payment experience and investment experience with self-custody assets, that's a win, right? Especially when you get to things like, we talked the last panel talked about yield-bearing stablecoins. Yield-bearing stablecoins is where you can really be your own bank. You can have an account in your self-custody wallet that's earning yield, and you can spend it as easily as you can spend your traditional Visa or Amex card. There's a lot of value to that, and anybody can use it.
I think that's right, and there is something profound about the idea that people can be their own bank, but I think it is worth remembering that when you have a self-custody wallet, you are holding a stablecoin where the fiat linked with that is held at a regulated financial institution, right? So you're taking, I think what's actually happening is it's like the decomposing of the financial system, so like these pieces are being pulled apart a little bit, and there's a custodial service that banks provide, which has been tied with all of the payment services in the UI and all these different pieces. And actually what we're seeing is that you can kind of separate that custodial function from the provision of the UI, from the provision of the payment instrument, et cetera. And that, again, I think is like profound in its implications for the kind of experiences that can be built and the economics of payments and everything else. But there is still somebody who's holding that asset until and unless we all become beings of pure light, and the thing that we're holding in our wallet is something more like a Bitcoin or something that...
Yeah, banks are still very much the anchor to the fiat world. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, now there's this whole layer of blockchain that sits on top of banks. And
For sure.
banks' roles are changing.
Yeah, for sure.
They may not want to talk about that yet, but banks' roles are changing.
One of the really profound things about building something like Sling, I think, is you realize at some point, and we had this moment like a few months ago, Kyle, who's up there, but also sitting there, where we realized that effectively what we're building is actually kind of just like a global Monzo. Like you slap a debit card on top of it, and it's kind of indistinguishable in many ways. And that was like a kind of wild moment where you're like, oh, wow, the utility that you can get out of this thing is kind of indistinguishable.
Is the wallet in Sling custodial or non-custodial?
Self-custodial, key is generated on the device. It's stored wrapped with a key from the secure enclave and then backed up. Yeah.
And do all users understand self-custody, or does it not matter?
I think that's a difficult question to answer. I think it does matter that they understand it. I think it's very important that they understand that they are holding their keys, they're backed up, all this kind of stuff, and we explain that to them when they sign up. But I don't think they need to understand, there's no set of words for them to print out, cut into lots of pieces and hide around their house. It's a very simple, sign up with Google and, your keys being generated and backed up kind of experience that your crypto grandmother could go through,
Yeah, I mean, that's a big problem, right? If people lose their keys or they don't fully understand how it works and money gets stuck, that's going to lead to sort of nasty surprises.
For sure. Yeah, and with us, I think that's very unlikely because the key is backed up the way it is and everything. But we do try to tell people, like, we can't touch the funds in your wallet. We have no access to it, which is both a feature and a bug in some ways.
Yeah, that's actually something we run into quite a bit at Tweed. We offer social sign-on and recovery while keeping that full 100% self-custodial nature of the wallet. And then there are these sort of barriers that are created. Well, if you want to keep 100% self-custody, you have to not necessarily have a million recovery methods. You can't have all of these other normal Web 2-esque regular banking type support systems in order to maintain that. But that does bring me to my next question on security, because I think, people are always scared coming from their traditional banks, or even just us crypto natives who have had their funds drained from a wallet, like even with a 100% self-custodial MetaMask, right? So how are you keeping all of those principles in place while making sure you're conveying security, but also what are those security principles you're keeping in your product?
So yeah, I think things like scams, rugs, they're a little bit of an occupational hazard in this space. And as a builder, it is critical to help sort of your customers signal trust. If I think about a payment flow on the Helio platform, it's a self-custody payment flow. There's no a legal requirement to KYC or KYB merchants or users that use our payment flows, but we do offer those options. So if you're a merchant that's accepting payments using Helio, we say to you, hey, go and KYB, and then we're going to give you a verified badge so that you can signal to your users that you are doxed, that you are a proper entity, that you have documents, that maybe in some cases you are regulated, and that buyers can feel safe spending their crypto with you. So I think it's a little bit of a, at the moment, a tricky situation. On the one hand, you want to enable anyone to go and sell. So this sort of, there isn't a firm requirement for KYC, KYB, but it is very important to kind of move the needle or kind of move and replicate what works in fintech already, right? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Offer those KYC, KYB options so that people can feel safe. And then from a security point of view, just standard things like auditing your smart contracts. Jim and I actually have a cybersecurity background, so we've built and skilled companies in the cyberspace. So those are just table stakes, right? Safe infrastructure, auditing, best practice around running platforms. But it's really about incentivizing user behavior and creating trust. I think that moves the needle.
It's kind of like that Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. Self-custody is great responsibility. You are taking control of your assets. You are holding the keys, and there are some risks to it if you don't properly manage those keys and you're not conscious of what you're doing, right? And I think there are some services that make it, in the name of trying to get people on board, they make it such that people just sort of like sign up and things get re-centralized. All these things that we've been working re-centralized, in some cases get re-centralized, but they get re-centralized behind your Apple account, your Google account, and these other things which have their own vulnerabilities, right? Ultimately, you're only going to be as secure as the weakest thing in that recovery chain. You talked about kind of like what are the different ways to recover. If one of those recovery methods is ultimately insecure, well, then that's it. You've lost the access to that account and your wallet gets potentially drained. So understanding the responsibility that you're taking on with self-custody is really important.
Yeah, I think that's very, very, very true. You know, whether it's a Google account or whatever, you've got to be very thoughtful about that weakest point in the chain. I think, security is one of the most important things that anybody who's building any kind of financial service can offer their customers, in the same way that people don't want their house broken into or whatever. They don't want their bank account or their self-custody wallet being broken into. And it's just an essential responsibility, That's it.
Yeah, that's really great, guys. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to wrap up with, some quick highlights. So one final question for each of you, an opportunity to sort of shill yourself, if you will. If you could describe the one killer use case for your product, who the ideal customer is, what that flow looks like, or what the end user is seeing.
I'll go first with a little shill. So payments in crypto is still very, very early. And the challenge is the market big enough to build a sustainable business? So we've been quite practical in the sense we sell the long-term vision for crypto payments and all the benefits that it gives, but then also find near-term use cases that generate volume. So we just launched something recently together with Dex Screener. It's called Moonshot. It allows folks to launch a token for under $2 and then trade on a bonding curve. So it's a really fun experience, I think, for folks that are crypto fluent to get to do something that generates volume, and that's fun. And that allows us to grow the team, earn a little bit more fees, and keep building on the payments track. So go check it out, Moonshot.
We believe that you should be able to send money to anyone in the world, whether they're next to you or they're 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 miles away, without needing to know anything about their bank account or what an IBAN is or anything like that. You should be able to send it basically instantly and basically for free. And I think that this is one of the universal human needs. We all live in an economy, and we all need to text each other, send each other photos and videos, and we need to be able to send money and value back and forth. And so in a way, everybody is a customer, We've got it up and running invite only in a huge number of countries now with billions of people, combined population. We'll keep adding more and more countries and go from there. But I think, we're addressing really like a universal, very important use case, and we're using crypto because it is the best tool for the job, and for no other reason, really.
For us, it's about security and convenience, right? The chips on these cards are the same chips that are in things like passports and payment cards, and they're disconnected from the internet. So you've got this very safe place to secure your keys, but it's also somewhere where it's not incredibly painful to use it, right? It's very convenient to use it. So being able to combine those things is super important to us. I don't want to trust my cell phone provider with my private keys for all of my assets, right? In a world of SIM swaps, the last thing I want to do is trust Verizon to protect my assets. I want to control those. If I choose self-custody, I want to control those assets myself on the most secure chip and the most secure device I can have.
Can I make one really quick additional pitch? Kyle, the guy who is going to be in this seat, is going to be at the Payment Summit next door on a panel right after this, I think.
Amazing. Well, I think we could all sit here and keep chatting payments all day long. Personally, I love talking about payments. But I will let us wrap up. Thank you all so much for listening. You can come chat with any of us after. I'll be over there. I'm sure the rest of us will be standing somewhere. Come say hi, ask some questions. Would be happy to meet some more of you. And enjoy the rest of your time at the Hacker House.
Thank you.
Thank you.